Guten Tag! Welcome to Wine's Cool. In this installment, we're going to be talking about Germany and Austria. These are two countries that historically have been associated and who use a lot of the same grapes, but whose wine styles are actually fairly different and whose wine areas are pretty far apart. As you probably know, Germany is fairly far north and relatively cool. In fact, Germany is further north than you can usually ripen grapes, so there needs to be some kind of mechanism to help the grapes ripen. Enter the rivers. And the rivers are important because they help moderate the climate. They act as heat sinks. In other words, they take in heat during the day and keep a little bit of warmth in the vineyard overnight. But they also reflect sunlight up onto the vines and help the ripening process that way. In the bends of the rivers, we have steep slopes, and these slopes are important because they present the vines to the sun in a way that helps them ripen too.
Now, isn't German wine sweet? Isn't it all Riesling? Those bloody Germans make anything else?
That's true, it is mostly Riesling. But there are also a number of other grapes that are used in Germany too. Sylvaner, Scheurebe, Müller-Thurgau, even some Burgundy varieties like Pinot Blanc, which they call Weißburgunder, or even Pinot Gris, which they call Grauburgunder. Red grapes, there are a number, but the most important one is Pinot Noir, which they call Spätburgunder. Overwhelmingly, though, the wines are actually not sweet, and Germany is moving more and more toward a drier style, even for the Rieslings. These days, about 90% of the wines made in Germany are actually dry, or as they call them, trocken. At the same time, we should probably get away from the idea that all sweet wines are for amateurs. Some of the most beautiful wines in the world have residual sugar in them, and it shouldn't be a measure of quality whether the wine is dry or sweet. German wine labels can be pretty complex, but the classification system is relatively simple. There are 4 basic levels of wine in Germany. The first 2 we don't really see here in this country, Landwein and Tafelwein. Above that, we have 2 other levels, Qualitätswein, which is just a wine of a certain amount of quality from a particular region, and beyond that, you can pretty much label it how you want, and Prädikatswein. Prädikatswein adheres to a certain system, the Prädikat system, which is a measurement of ripeness. It starts with Kabinett, which are the least ripe and sort of lightest, crispest style wine. Above that, there's Spätlese, which is sort of a little bit later harvest, a little richer, a little riper. Auslese, which is richer and denser still. And then beyond that, we have dessert wines. So Beerenauslese, Trockenbeerenauslese, and Eiswein, which are wines made from frozen grapes. The Prädikatswein labels can have a lot of words on them. Complex, long German words. And that can be pretty intimidating. But if we learn how to read them, they can actually tell us a whole lot about the wines. For instance, here we have a wine made from Riesling, ripened to the Kabinett level, in the vineyard called Würzgarten, which is in the town of Erzig. So we have
Erziger Würzgarten Riesling Kabinett.
So this tells us the Prädikat level, Kabinett. It tells us the grape. And then it tells us exactly where the wine comes from. It comes from a vineyard site called Würzgarten, which is in the town of Erzig. In this case, we have another Riesling, ripened to the level of Spätlese, so a little bit richer, a little bit riper. And it comes from a town called Kreuznach, and it's a vineyard site called Krotenpfuhl.
Kreuznacher Krötenpfuhl Riesling Spätlese.
Here we have a Riesling ripened to the Auslese level, which for non-dessert wines would be the richest, ripest style, coming from the town of Bernkastel and the vineyard site Badstube.
Bernkastler Badstube Auslese.
We should remember that Prädikat is not a measurement of sweetness in the wine. It's a measurement of ripeness of the grapes before fermentation. So, even though the wines tend to be a little bit sweeter as you go up the scale, you can also have trocken or dry versions of any of them. There are 13 different wine-growing regions, or Anbaugebiete, in Germany. The most important of them, though, are the Mosel and the Rheingau. The Mosel is known for wines that are leaner, slaty, sort of high-acid kind of style wines. And Rheingau is known for wines with a little bit more power. After that, we have the Rheinhessen, which produces a whole lot of wine, some of which is very good, but most of which is kind of medium quality. The Nahe, which is known for very boutique, very high-quality producers. And the Pfalz, which is down south and tends to make some of the best dry wines in Germany.
Aren't wines from Germany and Austria, the same. Phew.
Well, even though they share some of the same grape varieties, the wine growing areas in the two countries are pretty far apart. In fact, you can almost fit the entire country of France in between them. And Austria's wine growing regions are a little further south and really have a climate that's something similar to northern Italy than Germany. Like Germany, however, Austria has a long, deep history of growing grapes and making wine. In fact, it goes back to the Romans. But it wasn't until the 1980s that Austria really came into its own. It was actually the result of a national scandal where a few people got caught adding what is basically antifreeze to their wines. Those people are still in prison, but we now have greater quality control and the overall character of the wine has increased dramatically. Also, like Germany, they do grow a lot of Riesling. However, the most important grape is Gruner Veltliner. And Gruner Veltliner has a beautiful sort of complex interplay between sort of apricot and peach fruit notes with this wonderful savory spice, which is something like white pepper or maybe a fresh cut green bean. So even though the white wines are really the most important, we do also have some very good red wines. We have reds from a grape called Blaufränkisch. We have reds from a grape called St. Laurent, and then also a little bit of Pinot Noir or Spätburgunder. Austria did copy Germany's classification system after World War II, all the way down to those predicate levels, but now these are used very little. Usually the wines are just labeled by grape variety, region, maybe an associated village or a vineyard site, if those two things would apply. Of Austria's many wine-growing regions, the three most important are the Wachau, the Kamptal, and the Krimstal. And these all exist along the Danube, not far from Vienna. Of these three, the Wachau is kind of king. It has the deepest history and usually the highest quality wines. It also has its own classification system. Their system is kind of like Germany's predicate system, measuring ripeness and increasing complexity in the wines. It starts at Steinfeder, and then it goes to Federspiel, which is kind of like Germany's Spätlese. And then above that, we have the Smaragd wines, which are usually the most complex, most age-worthy, and also probably the greatest wines in all of Austria. Okay, so what did you learn today about Germany and Austria?
Germany and Austria, they're often associated like they're the same kind of wine. It's not so. Got different climates, different wine styles. Yeah, these push-ups are good. Austria, they focus on Gruner Veltliner in first place, Riesling in second. Just get a little introverts, there we go. There are actually two major classifications for German wine. Qualitate's fine and predicate's fine. The later wines, the latter wines often have complex labels that actually tell us a lot about wines. Germany emphasizes the Riesling grape, but produces many other wines as well. Oh yeah.